Yeah, yeah. Welcome, respected doctors. Due to pandemic, the Desert Medical Association has started a web series of lectures. This is the second lecture of this series. Today we have with us diabetologist and our association joint secretary, Dr. Dr. Ami Sangvi ma'am interfaceries. She is a consultant diabetologist and co-director of Sangvi Eye Clinic. She is consultant at Nama Hospital, lecturer for CPS diabetology. She is a member of organizing committee of Challengers in Diabetes. She has been speaker of many national conferences like RSSDI, CID, etc. She has published a chapter on Moody in RSSDI textbook of diabetes, and she has written many articles in various journals. I request Dr. Ami Sangvi ma'am to start her speech. Hello.
So, can I start?
Yeah, sure.
So, a very good afternoon to all the doctors present today. A very warm welcome, though at a short notice, where Desert Medical Association and we decided to have these web series, to kind of academically get updated through these innovative mediums, so that we at the same time we are not lagging behind in our academics, and at the same time we are taking care that we are not meeting in person, and so there is no chances of any spread of infection. So I hope everyone is doing very good. And so yeah, today my topic I thought will take something very different than the molecules which we talk about all the time. I thought we'll be discussing on diet, diabetes and COVID. So my talk has been divided into two parts. The first part would be diet and diabetes barring the COVID part. So once we get those concepts clear, we go diabetes and COVID. So what are the changes when we talk about diabetes and the COVID times? So the first half of my talk would be regarding the diabetes and diet part. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we talk about diabetes, or we talk about various guidelines, or we talk about how to start treatment of diabetes, diet or lifestyle modification, LSM what we call it, has always been the first step. That and physical activity is always as a first step in the management of type 2 diabetes. So when we have to take that as a prescription for first step in the management of diabetes, what are the points we are looking at, and what are the points we would like to share with our patients? So lifestyle modification or lifestyle management is definitely the first line management of type 2 diabetes, which is always advocated even by the guidelines, be it international or national guidelines, where since we had population with a high waist-hip ratio, with increased the resistance we all know is high. Even the lean Indians, like Dr. Yagnik calls it the lean fat diabetics. Even the lean Indians have a very high fat ratio. So diet becomes an integral part of management as regards to diabetes. So low calorie diet, reducing the sedentary behavior, and exercise form the foundation of all therapy. Lifestyle intervention with diet definitely leads to weight loss. It helps to prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes or glucose intolerance, or if the diabetes is set in, then it definitely helps to delay the complications. So right from the pre-diabetic to patients with complications, diet in diabetic management has a role to play as a primary, secondary or tertiary prevention. And again, as I said, objective that when diabetes has set in, we want the cardiovascular events to come down if the sugars are under control, and thereby prevent the complications due to diabetes. So as I already mentioned earlier, that it's been told by all the guidelines, be the international guidelines like the ADA, the American Diabetes Association guidelines, which were just released in 2020, also have said that first line therapy is going to be lifestyle management. at the entry level, beat the entry level of A1C 7.5, more than 7.5 or more than 9. The one line of treatment which has been consistent throughout is lifestyle management. And this has been reinforced by the RSSDI. RSSDI, which is our own Indian diabetic groups, have also Research Society of Diabetes has also kind of, re-emphasized on fact that the first line of management in diabetic patient is going to be a lifestyle modification. So lifestyle management is definitely a balance between a balanced diet and a physical activity. Either going either ways, definitely there would be changes in the glycemic values. Now, why diet emphasis is so much? Because India is going through a nutrition transition. The trends associated with rapid changes in diet and food consumption patterns. Because of increased urbanization, things have changed. The transition in global food availability, all the type of foods available, first they used to be available in the Western world, are available now, and the affordability. Definitely people can afford all types of food. So there is a we are undergoing something called as a nutrition transition. If anyone is interested, this is a wonderful paper by Dr. V. Mohan, which my mentor for diabetes and Dr. R.M. Anjana, who have given a beautiful paper on the role of lifestyle factors in the epidemic of diabetes, the lessons learned from India. So it is about the Indian data. We previously, if you consider the previous diet, or now it is called the paleo diet, which how we used to eat in the earlier times. It was high legumes, vegetables, coarse grains, and whole wheats. But everything is transition now. We all agree. In fact, I had a patient today who himself was 109 kgs, and he told me 17-year-old son is 122 kgs. Now imagine where are we lead, and he's like he is not able to give up the diet, the food fad which he has. So this is the westernized the world which we are dealing with right now. Our food is transitioned into high calorie diet with highly polished cereals. There is much more intake of processed food, which is high in fat and oil food, increase in meat and animal product, increase in intake of these products, increase in intake of sugars and sweetened beverages, and definitely the consumption of fruits and vegetables has gone down. What do we mean? So that's the backdrop of what we are now going to be setting our talk to. What does medical nutrition therapy mean? American Diabetic Association says that it is an integral component of diabetes prevention, management, and self-education. And there is nothing called as one size fits all. Everyone requires a different diet. It should be a tailor-made diet because everyone's eating pattern is different. The glycemic values are different. The household environment might be different. And therefore, the meal planning should be more individualized. In short, what are the goals of the medical nutrition therapy we should be looking at when we're treating our diabetic patients? Is to promote and support healthful eating patterns, emphasizing a variety of nutrient-dense food. You cannot tell them, itna hi khana hai, ye hi khana hai. You have to give them a variety and appropriate portion sizes so that we improve their health, achieve the body weight goals which we are looking at in terms of BMI, attend an individualistic glycemic blood pressure and cholesterol goals, and delay or prevent the complications. Also, when we are talking about the nutrition, the individual nutrition needs have to be met. Now, someone with a nephropathy, we cannot ask him to have a high protein diet. So according to the need-based, patient-based nutrition therapy has to be based on. So again, personal and cultural preferences. So someone who is from South, and if you ask them to eat more of chapati, he's not going to eat. So you have to adjust in his routine diet. So personal and cultural preferences have to be taken care of. Again, health literacy and numeracy. Not everyone is well educated. If you say take more protein diet, is your patient going to understand? Is every patient going to understand that? So again, that emphasis. Access to healthful foods. There have been economic constraints. In fact, in COVID times, there have been more economic constraints. So we have to take all this in mind. Again, the behavioral changes, the existing barriers to change. There are people, I have met people, when I tell them to eat on time, eat healthy food, there are elderlies who tell me, but bahu bana ke de to hum khaye. So these are barriers. These are practical things which we need to take into consideration when we are talking to our patients. To maintain pleasure of eating. Say if you tell them to have those bland foods or salads, it may just work for a month. After a month, what? See, diet or lifestyle modifications have to be consistent. They have to go on for a period of time. It cannot come for a month, get the A1C back to 7.5, and then he starts binging on what he wants. Doesn't work like that. So providing non-judgmental messages about food choices and limiting the food choices. So that's what I tell my patients. Moderation is the key. If you eat thoda sa. Like, Dr. Panikar says, who was my teacher, that shadi mein jao to meetha khao, but shadi mein roj mat jao. This is the way you should be talking to your patient. To provide an individual with diabetes the practical tools like to develop eating habits rather than focusing on individual macronutrients, micronutrients, or single foods. That may be very tough because we are not dietitians. We have to give brief idea. So, every point when you talk to a patient, these small things come into account. So diet as prescription would definitely involve these steps. Preliminary step would be to access their usual daily food intake, identify the sources of macro and micronutrients, ask about the patient's medical history. If the patient is already on vitamins, minerals, laxatives, or any other supplements, the new fighters, the Amway thing, the protein diet. So you have to explain to the patient. Not every patient requires high amount of protein. They have to be balanced out. And knowledge of behavioral history like the stress levels, huge contributor to the sugar levels and the physical activity. Now, when we come to each macronutrient, so first we're going to be talking about carbohydrates. So when you consume something called as a high glycemic index meal. Now, what does glycemic index mean? It is like to compare, you assess how much high your sugars are going to go in comparison to a bar set. They generally take whole wheat white bread as the standard, and then they compare that how high the sugars are going. So that's your the glycemic index of that food. Lower the glycemic index, better it is for our patients. So if you're consuming, and generally carbohydrates increase the glycemic index, especially the refined ones, they increase the glycemic index of a food. So consumption of high glycemic index meals. Also, voluntary and energy intake increases, and there is less satiety associated with such carbohydrates. So the refined carbohydrates, if you have something with maida, you're going to be feeling hungry again, and which would contribute to weight gain and development of diabetes in future. So the carbohydrate content in our diet, ideally to the guidelines, should be around 50 to 60%. They have seen in a study where our carbohydrate content is a little more, around 64 to 70%. So when I talk to my patients, kitna chapati khate ho? 8-9 खा लेते हैं, छोटा छोटा होता है. The first answer is छोटा छोटा होता है. Fulka types, they are so defensive of eating. They also know that 9 chapati is bad, but they defend themselves saying छोटा छोटा chapati रहता है. So you have to work it out. If I tell that 9 chapati patient to eat 2 chapatis, he is not going to agree to me. So the option there you can give is, say, maybe cut down on the chapatis, eat at 2 intervals, maybe replace with multi-grain atta chapatis. So these are the options we have to offer to our patients to bring down the glycemic index of the carbohydrate intake in their diet. So the recommended carbohydrate intake is 130, but generally they see that it's around 220, 200 milligram of carbohydrate which goes in our patients, and this is required as a fuel for the CNS without reliance on glucose production from the ingested fats. So now when we talk about those fat diets like the low carbohydrate diets or very low carbohydrate, we have seen patients who are going on keto diets, so that is zero carbohydrate diets. They are not recommended for us, and these diets also eliminate many foods which can be sources of good amount of energy, fiber, vitamins, and minerals, which are again important for a dietary palatability. So when we talk about carbohydrate, not all carbohydrates are bad, not all carbohydrates are good. So we need to balance out the specific type of carbohydrate which is ingested. What is the type of starch which the patient is ingesting in that carbohydrate? The style of preparation, the amount of time given to cooking, the ripeness, the fruits concerned here, and the degree of processing. Now, the extrinsic variables that may influence the glucose response would include what is the fasting PP levels you're dealing with. So this is very specific to a diabetic patients. The micronutrient distribution of the meal in which the food is consumed. What is the available insulin? Like how much insulin resistance is he having? And accordingly, we can plan his meal. Now coming to the type of carbohydrates. So comparing simple carbohydrates is complex carbohydrates. Now looking at these pictures, I'm only getting so tempted to have them. So it is very tempting to consume a simple carbohydrate, which is plainly sugar. Excessive consumption definitely, like of refined grains and added sugar, harms your body in all the ways. Because simple carbohydrates break down very quickly and cause a blood sugar spike, and this can contribute to cravings, hunger, and overeating. So weight gain, glycemic levels go for a toll. The whole thing gets disrupted. But coming to complex carbohydrates with fiber content. So now here I have divided my slides into the area or the region in India which we are dealing with. So if we talk about the north, the intake of carbohydrate, refined carbohydrate, maida is more, and also they have high carbs and also moderate fiber content with whole wheat flour. So their parathas we can encourage them to have it more whole wheat or flour with jowar, barley, and kuttu. The consumption, less carbohydrate and high fiber food, they eat a lot of pulses like rajma, lal chana, chole. So these can be they can be asked to take down the maida part and increase these things in their diet. Coming to the east, again, the consumption of brown rice increases. It's more of a fish region where rice intake is more. So we have to again ask them to eat more of pulses, less of rice. Brown rice should be advocated more and cut down on the maida. When we come down south, the wheat consumption goes for a toss. They do not eat much wheat. Maida consumption is also less. It's more about rice out there. Encourage more of parboiled rice, brown rice, or red rice with these pulses again for them. And coming to the west where we are from, again, the wheat and the rice intake is almost similar. So we have to encourage more of whole wheat with maize. Maize intake can be more. We can include more soya in our diet and the pulse intake. Now coming to the second part, the factors which affect the glycemic is the type of starch. So starchy foods are very widely in the glycemic response. So something like a good starch, say which is the pulses, they have the high amylose content. So this is a good starch which is associated with lower glycemic response. The glycemic index doesn't go very high. So it comes in a good starch, a good carbohydrate. Wherein potato, like the amylopectin starches are associated with the higher glycemic response. It's a bad starch. So like, Dr. Shilpa Joshi says that when you are eating a chapati and you are eating a potato ka sabji, you are not eating any vegetable. You are eating a carbohydrate and a carbohydrate. So it's not helping you anyway. So this is just an example that this is a bad starch. So if you want to have rice or if you want to have potato, how can you convert it? There are tricks. You can convert it into good starch. So say, cook the starchy food, cool them overnight and reheat at low temperatures to increase the amount of resistant starch and lower the GI index. In fact, South, I have stayed in South for a couple of years. They cook the rice the previous day and then they kind of pull it off the whole night and consume it in the next day. I think it's a very intelligent way because that way you're bringing down the starch content. Also the rate of ingestion. So high glycemic, low glycemic index breakfast has shown to lower the PPBS because the glycemic index is low. The the spike is not very high. It is a little low. And even the second meal is if it is in the in a lower glycemic index, you get a better postprandial glucose control. Something called as time in range. So the time where you are not in the fasting stage, but time in range, your sugar should be, that's the time in range should be between 70 to 140. So if you're having a low GI meal, you can be in a good time in range level. Also the ripeness of the food matters. So the low glycemic response of underripe foods compared to overripe fruits may be ascribed to the high starch content. So slightly underripe fruit. Here you can allow a banana too. Advice as a mid-meal, not with meals. Even mango, you can have not even pakawa mango, but a slightly raw, unripe mango up as a mid-meal. Generally advise patients between breakfast and lunch, a mid-meal can be fruit. Never ask the patient to consume a fruit with a meal because that can increase the sugar levels. Also the cooking, the steam cooking, the dry heat cooking can help in bringing down the glycemic index. Now, what is a glycemic load? It is actually just a slide about it, that the glycemic load is calculated by the glycemic index multiplied by the carbohydrate content of the food. So the glycemic content of the food and diets which are low, the foods with low glycemic index like oats, barley, lentils, legumes, the bread, apples, oranges are definitely low. And the fiber, fructose, lactose, they definitely help to tend the lower glycemic response. I'll come to a diabetic plate later in my talk, which will help us to kind of understand what I was talking in these slides. Coming to next, another important part, protein, the macronutrients, which has really, has an important role to play as when our meals are concerned. So starting up, what they say is you start a meal with a protein source, followed by a carbohydrate source, and that would help in improving the satiety and maintain a good glycemic control. Now, the ingested protein appears to increase the insulin response without increasing the glucose concentrations. So the reducing the amount of dietary protein, again, you have to take, it's not don't make it zero protein or something like that, but content. So if we are allowing 1 gram per kg body weight of protein for a normal individual like us, 1 to 1.2 gram. For a nephropathy patient, we say go on low protein diet, say around 0.8 to around 0.8 gram per kg body weight, and this really helps. So the guidelines say that 10 to 15% or 12 to 15% of our diet should be protein intake. Now, what are the sources of protein? Non-vegetarian, eggs, especially the white of the egg, the chicken. Lean meat is what they advocate. Fish, definitely a good source of protein. Vegetarian sources, milk, cheese, pulses, soya, paneer, yogurt can be sources of protein. So the common foods with protein content are dals and pulses, which again have fiber also, and low carbohydrate and high protein content are present in the vegetarian diet like paneer, curd, cheese, soya bean. Coming to the third macronutrient, which is the fats. Now, fats definitely have to be used moderation in cooking. Reheating of fat should be completely discouraged. Now, fat quality is equally important, but then the amount of fat. So you have to cut down on the saturated fatty acids and the trans fatty acid. You can take more of PUFA, which is polyunsaturated fatty acid, or monounsaturated fatty acids. So what they're trying to say, fat is important, but what fat you consume is also important. So saturated fatty acid is basically our bhajias, and those trans fats have to be avoided. 20 to 30% of a diet, according to guidelines, say that should be with fat. So what are the fat? As I mentioned earlier, that fat quality is more important than quantity. So MUFA is available in avocado, olive oil, mustard oil, groundnut oil, canola oil, rice bran, peanuts, nuts. Walnut is more in PUFA, but other nuts are more in MUFA. So, and even polyunsaturated fatty acids like omega-3 is in soybean, mustard, pulses, fish like tuna and salmon, nuts and oil seeds like walnuts, pumpkin seeds, and flax seeds. Omega-6 is present in sunflower, cottonseed, oil, groundnut, rice bran. So increase the amount of omega-3 fatty acids and monosaturated fatty fats in your diet. Cut down on saturated fats and trans fats. And decrease the intake of omega-6 because we already get enough. So saturated fats are exactly what we were talking about, the increased amount of butter, ghee, oil, the skin of the poultry, the red meat or processed meat like sausages, ham, and bacon. Even the vegetarian sources of saturated fats are coconut oil or cocoa butter. Trans fats are deep-fried fruits like samosas, bhajias, french fries, chips, or bakery products, and vanaspati and dalda. So saturated fats can form some part of your diet, but we need to avoid trans fats completely. Again, the oil usage according to the region changes. We don't use the same oil. Like north, it's more of mustard, soybean, and rice bran. East is mustard, rice bran, and soybean. South is more of coconut, groundnut, soybean, and west is more of groundnut, safflower, and soybean. So groundnut, canola, sesame oil, or rice bran, oil like soybean and mustard are high in omega-3, which are recommended, high in MUFA. Even the cooking tips and tricks help, like steaming of the food, stir fry instead of, like a deep fry, appam makers which require less amount of oil, or grilling of foods will definitely cut down on fat consumption and make your food more healthier. So it is not about eating less, it's about eating right. Do not make drastic changes in the diet. Set up small goals. Do not make bigger goals, because stepwise modification is crucial in management in patients with diabetes. And reduce the calories based on meal assessment, recall, and health goals. Provide alternative food choices, keeping cultural preferences in mind, and reducing portion size. So health risk assessment will make the patient more aware about his health. See, self-education is what we need to do. Set up goals, small goals, and motivate the patient to follow those. 4 essential components of patient management are nutritional assessment, setting a practical and achievable goals, nutritional intervention, and including nutrition education, followed by regular evaluation of the goal achievement. So key factors are emphasizing non-starchy vegetables, minimize added sugars and refined grains, and choose whole foods over highly processed foods to the extent possible. It's not a short-term diet, it's a long-term lifestyle change. So this comes to the end of my first talk. If the moderators allow me, then we'll go to the questions first. I don't know how to go, or should I finish my talk first?
Hello, ma'am. You can finish with your second topic, ma'am. Then we will collectively
take up questions.
Okay. Yeah, ma'am.
So I'll just start sharing my second screen too. Just stop share. I think there are quite a few questions in the chat box. Everyone, please be patient. This is a short talk. After this, we'll take up questions. Are my slides visible? Raju, is it visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, visible.
Okay. So,
Yes,
just going ahead. Just going ahead. Now we are done with the first half of the talk, which was how to prescribe diet as the first line of treatment. But the new thing which came up 5 months back, the COVID pandemic, has revolutionized quite a few things. The way we think, the way we eat, the way we behave, the way we react, the way we see patients, everything has changed. So, diet adherence in COVID times, there have been papers on this. And for diabetic patients, we have seen a whole lot of changes. So it has been very difficult. We have seen 2 ends of the spectrum here. One end where patients have been absolutely under control, wonderful glycemic values, good A1Cs, in fact going into hypoglycemias because they were at home, eating healthy, eating home cooked food, the fast foods were not available, and the stress levels were less. At the same time, we have seen patients going into bad hyperglycemias because the stress levels were high, people were not getting enough food due to many constraints, being the economic ones, being the availability of food, because there were areas where vegetables, fruits were not available. So we have seen 2 ends of the spectrum. There were people paranoid with getting the infection. I have seen patients who have told me, सिर्फ आपको दिखाने के लिए 5 महीने के बाद घर से बाहर निकले हैं. So there have been 2 ends of the spectrum we have seen. So this is a short talk about how to maintain or how to make our patients adhere to a diet in type 2 diabetes in this COVID era. There's a problem. Sharing my slides again, there's some problem. I don't know. Yeah. So we all know in diabetes care has been tough because there has been impact of social distancing. People, elderly people have been stopped going down. Their kids are not allowed, which I think is right, not allowing him to even go down to the to their gardens down in the building or walk in the building podiums because people are scared. Social distancing is become has helped a few people but has been tough on few people also, the quarantine and lockdown. So there have been cases of worsening of glycemic control. Also, patients who have been diagnosed with COVID, there is something called as, even patients who did not have diabetes, there is something called as new onset diabetes after COVID being a viral infection has caused many patients to have new onset diabetes. So there have been different categories of people we are seeing. Patients who have been discharged after COVID treatment have been on steroids, their sugars have gone haywire. So there has been cases of bad worsening of glycemic control. Also, lack of physical activity. We all stay in small houses, so limited physical activities are people with diabetes because of lockdown and the social distancing. And as I earlier mentioned, the restriction in the food supplies. There were areas that there are people who have come and told me that we were eating only rice and pulses because nothing else was available. So alteration in the eating habits has also caused the bad glycemic control. On the other hand, there are many people who have come out with their culinary skills, cooking cakes, cooking this challenge, that challenge, making new recipes. And again, that has also led to a very, altered glycemic levels. So we have to empower our patient for self-management. See, these have been tough times for our diabetic patients also, because as regards to medicine supplies, there were times when medicines were not available, insulins were not available. They were not able to get in touch with the doctors for some reason. They couldn't visit their clinics. Though we immediately started teleconsultations and started helping our patients. But again, here where self-management and education comes into play. So we have to, it's an ongoing process. We have to help our patient with knowledge, skill, and ability to successfully manage the disease on their own. And this is a critical element of care for all our patients with type 2 diabetes, or even with type 1 diabetes. So diabetic educators, American Association of Diabetic Educators, have described 7 self-behavior points for a patient, which is being active, healthy eating, taking medication on time, monitoring your glycemic levels, solving the problems, reducing risk, and healthy coping. This will take care of many disturbances in the glycemic levels which we have seen. Now, poor diet and diabetes has been a great risk factor in COVID era. So people with diabetes, heart disease, and asthma are found to be more vulnerable. Maybe, me and you both have the same diabetic or a non-diabetic like us have the same chances of getting the infection, but diabetics with comorbidities, once they get the infections, the mortality rates have been higher because the immune system is compromised, making it harder to fight the virus and likely leading to a longer recovery period, because the virus may thrive in an environment of high blood glucose. So poor nutrition due to either insufficient availability of the key nutrients or their compromise in immune function can increase an overall infection risk. And so glucose control definitely becomes the key. With a balanced diet and regular exercise, there can be adequate glycemic control in patients with diabetes. Now, importance of dietary adherence have to be emphasized every now and then, because as we mentioned in the first talk, diabetes is a diet-dependent disease and lifestyle modification are important. And even a good healthy diet, in addition to maintaining a good glycemic control, uplifts the mood and tries to prevent comorbidities. So when we are talking about preventing comorbidities, there was a paper which said that reduction in excess calories and improvement in the dietary composition may prevent many primary and secondary cardiovascular events. So the current guidelines are more, this is called the Mediterranean diet, which they had seen that, which is high in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and legumes, and moderate in low fat dairy and seafood, then very low in processed meats, sugar sweetened beverages, refined grains and sodium. It's the other way around. We are more into westernized diet, which is very high in, refined grains, refined carbohydrates, but more of animal products, sweet consumption, which has to come down. Now, there was this wonderful paper by Dr. Butler, which said that they had studied this, that diets high in saturated fats, like we talked about the fried foods, the daldas, the ghees, and the butters, they have said that the fats, increase in fats, sugars, and refined carbohydrates contribute to the prevalence of obesity and type 2 diabetes and increase the risk of severe COVID. In fact, they have seen that this activates the innate immune system and impairs the adaptive immunity, leading to chronic inflammation. There was a small study which was done on mice. So where these mice were fed with high saturated fat, what they've seen that they had seen more of macrophage infiltration in the lungs. Okay, this causes more of infection. And if these saturated fats cause more macrophage infiltration in the lungs, these are the times where, you know, we are fighting with lung infections. So the immunity levels definitely go down and chances of having bad infection are more. So the amount of saturated fats have to come down. So more than ever, the wider access to healthy foods should be a top priority, and individuals should be mindful of eating healthy habits to reduce susceptibility to long-term complication from COVID. Because in this paper, what I remember reading is that they have said that once the COVID is over, we do not know still the long-term complications. There are still query complications on the on the nervous system, which though not much known because the infection is new, but there are always chances of long-term complications with COVID too. So that adherence are relevant issues. Providing solutions to high immunity and good glycemic control is what we are looking at now. Challenges have been consumption of high carbohydrates, as I earlier mentioned, more of refined carbohydrates like bread, pizzas, and limited availability of fresh vegetables and fruits. And since it's being a family time, festivals have started off, there have been times where monsoons have been, then we have that chai bhajiyas or family time where more sweets consumption is increased because everyone in the family was together. So this is the time when, you know, the diet goes haywire. Now, this is a time when we should be taking the daily caloric intake into consideration. So what should be an approximate daily caloric intake? If you take, say, an obese diabetic a patient who has a sedentary lifestyle, his caloric intake should be around 20 kilocalories per kg body weight, the ideal body weight. And non-obese should be around 20 to 25 kilocalories per kg body weight. So we take an example of an Indian man who is 165 centimeter in height and ideally weighing 62 kg. His caloric requirement is 1850 kilocalories a day to maintain a healthy diet weight that the person is leading, if you consider a person is leading a sedentary lifestyle. And this diet has to be distributed according to the three major meals: the breakfast, the lunch, and dinner, with an evening snack. And we already mentioned that carbohydrate should be 50 to 55% of the total caloric intake. So this is just a couple of slides of rebrushing what we saw. We spoke about carbohydrates, we spoke about fats, where ideally 3 teaspoons of oil should be consumed per day, not more than that. Protein intake we spoke about, and dietary fiber also we spoke about in our previous talk. Salt intake should be less than 5 grams of sodium chloride per day, and the age-old method of adding extra salt to the salads or any other thing should be avoided. Red meat should be avoided. Sweetened beverages, fruit juices should be completely avoided. The incessant desire, you know, we all are sitting at home, it's raining outside, you want to have consumed tea, or then you want to have those bhajiyas, those fried snacks, they should be strongly discouraged. A lot of things have been spoken about micronutrients in this COVID time. We all talk about vitamin C, the zinc. We are asking our patients to consume that because they are critical for our health and have played a pivotal role in strengthening the immune system. So they are commonly the vitamins and minerals which we are talking about. So macronutrients have their own place: the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats, and the fiber. But micronutrients also have an additional good place to maintain a good immune function. The vitamins like A, C, D, E, B2 riboflavin, B6 pyridoxine, B12 cobalamin, and B9 folic acid. And even minerals like iron, selenium, zinc, magnesium, copper have a role to play as regards immunity. Now, the next 3 slides are going to be about what are the sources of these, vitamins which we are talking about. I will just brush through them because they are available for reading everywhere. So, vitamin A can be available from broccoli, spinach, dairy fish, eggs, beef liver, kale. Vitamin C is basically the citrus fruits like oranges, then cabbage, peppers, green leafy vegetables, strawberries, mango. Well, vitamin D, sunlight, definitely a good source with fish, dairy products, red meat. And vitamin D, vitamin C is what we are encouraging our patients to take at this point of time. Vitamin E in vegetable oils, nuts, sunflower seeds, green vegetables, fortified fruits, foods like breakfast cereals. Vitamin B2 in the beef, cereals, oats, plain fat-free yogurt, milk, mushrooms, almonds, cheese. B6 in chickpeas, meat, fortified cereals, potatoes, bananas, and fish. B12, we are giving supplements, but in addition to that, mainly for the vegetarian people, because we have to give supplements because we all know metformin causes a reduction in B12. So patients who are on metformin may require an additional B12 supplement. For non-vegetarians, it is seafood, meat, oily fish, and some amount of dairy, which can help in B12. B9, green vegetables, meat, shellfish, beans, and legumes. Iron again is important. The heme sources are red meat, liver, and other organ meats, and non-heme sources can be spinach, legumes, and quinoa. Zinc, we are giving our patients right now for their immunity levels, shellfish, baked beans, fortified breakfast cereals, pumpkin seeds, magnesium, almonds, spinach, cashews. Copper is with beef, liver, shellfish, cashews, sunflower seeds. So this is what I was talking in my initial part of the talk. We talk about the diabetes plate method. It is a very effective way. What you can see, you cannot restrict anyone from eating anything. Keeping the total caloric intake in mind and the routine Indian diet in mind, what you can tell your patients is that half of your plate should be full of vegetables. Okay, so half of your plate can be vegetables in the form of curry, in the form of salads, the way or any other form they want to have it. 1/4 of your plate should contain proteins. So it should be dal, soya, egg white, or if non-vegetarian, fresh fish, lean poultry. And the other last half of your plate can be complex carbohydrates in the form of cereals like roti made with whole wheat, bajra, ragi, brown rice, etc. There is a sensory appeal to the food, which all of us will agree. The color, the flavor, the texture, even when you see those master chefs and all, they all talk about color, flavor, texture. We all know that food has to be appealing to have it. So sensory signals definitely affect the metabolism of the ingested nutrients. And meals and food preparation should be visually appealing with color, flavor, and texture. Ask them to involve more vegetables, and that will improve the color of the food. Also, psychological aspects. See, we cannot be prototype. Like cultural patterns, economic stability, attitude towards health and disease all affect the individual's eating behavior. So, affordable food items. Now, everyone can't afford a quinoa. So, they can be replaced with a chola or a dalia. Everyone can't afford a broccoli. You can give them options of spinach and cauliflower. And region-wise and season-wise availability of fruits and vegetables also have to be considered. So summarizing overall, while COVID-19 is causing inevitable distress to one and all, aside from the impact of the viral illness itself, social distancing and staying at home can affect both mood and the feelings, and this may cause depression, anxiety, loneliness, and irritability. So during these testing times, it is important to remember that eating well, staying hydrated, thinking positive, being calm, sleeping adequately, and staying active will contribute to both physical and the mental well-being. So emphasis should be given on personal eating habits on the basis of health requirements, healthy food choices, personal and cultural preferences, health literacy and numeracy, and nutrition therapy definitely plays an integral role in overall diabetes management. So it is just not about eating, it's about learning to live. So I end my talk here. Yeah, and I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for a wonderful session on diabetes, diet, and COVID. And there are a few questions in chat box. I will read it out for you.
Wait, let me open the chat box.
Yeah, ma'am. There is a first question from Dr. Dhyaneshwar Wagmare. What specific diet for COVID patients should they take?
Yeah, so as I just spoke, a balanced diet with the macronutrients and the micronutrients definitely would be helpful for our patients even in COVID time. So we have to be giving more emphasis on the vitamins and minerals in addition to a balanced carbohydrate diet with a limited amount of fats and protein. So I think that's what I covered in the last 40 minutes.
Yeah. Ma'am, next question from Dr. Jignesh Shravan. Madam, can you suggest any particular physical activity in COVID times?
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. See, what happens is that COVID times we have restricted physical activity back at home. So, people are telling me, kahan jayenge, chalne ko jagah nahi hai. So what you can advise them is like maybe some stationary cycling if the availability is there, or stationary walking or stationary jogging, skipping if the patient is able to do some amount of yoga. Definitely helps. A little power yoga if they're able to do some stretching exercises. And if nothing, 15 minutes of walk twice a day is what I advise. Dono meals ke baad 15 minutes chalo ghar mein. That also takes care of, the caloric burning out.
Yeah. Next question from Dr. Himanshu Modi. Plant-based diet is more beneficial than any other diet to diminish the effect of diabetes.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you plan a proper plant, I think he meant plant-based diet, which is more of vegetables, and that's what I understood from the question. So I think yes, it is definitely beneficial, sir. I think it helps in reversal. There are papers which are shown that the initial stages of diabetes. I'm not talking about people with HbA1c more than 8 and 9, but lower A1Cs, definitely a plant-based diet can help. But the key point here is that it has to be sustained over a period of time. It cannot be abhi sab theek ho gaya, then you get back to what you were.
There is a question from Dr. VP Jadhav. There is a two question he asked. Madam, can you suggest some physical exercise?
I just mentioned some limited amount of walking.
Hello.
Yeah, Raju. Yeah.
Ma'am, next question from Dr. VP Jadhav. Suggest some physical exercises for geriatric patient at home.
I think geriatric patient, yeah, they can't do that stationary cycling and all. Maybe some amount of yoga, meditation. And as I said, 15 minutes of walk in the house itself should work. And make it for 15 minutes, say 10 minutes, 3 times a day is also help. Ask them to target the steps. Maybe, 5,000 to 7,500 steps per day should be good enough for them.
Yeah. One more question from Dr. Jadhav. Which factor increase the immunity of diabetes patients in this pandemic, and which will be more useful?
So yeah, I think the intake of micronutrients and a more balanced diet is definitely recommended. Another factor is a good glycemic control. Your sugars have to be in a good range for to increase the immunity factor as regards this pandemic in our diabetic patients.
Next question from Dr. Ashok Sanghvi. Can we advise fast in diabetes patients?
Very predictable question from Dr. Ashok Sanghvi, because I do not allow him to fast during these times of diabetes. So I strongly advocate not to fast in our diabetic patients. No fasting, no feasting should be the key word as regards diabetic patients. Eat in moderation. Eat on time is the right way to go, especially in these pandemic times when if you fast, you are not well hydrated, you are not eating good amount of micronutrients and macronutrients, immunity levels can be affected. So better avoid fasting and better avoid feasting in these times.
Next question from Dr. Tejal Rao. In COVID patient, any changes in the level of glycemic index?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Dr. Tejal, earlier when I started my talk, that we had seen a lot of changes. Some patients were under very good glycemic control, in fact, having an hypoglycemia, where we had to reduce the dosages because they were at home eating healthy food, stress levels were less, while some people were very anxious about the infection going around, or they couldn't see their doctors, they could not get their medicine on time, and thereby, or even the anxiety levels were high and the glycemic levels were going very high, or even the diet pattern. So we have seen both ends of the spectrum. In fact, we have a paper coming out which has already been accepted Our authors, we are part of that study, which is we have done a patient data, which is just accepted 2 days back. We are expecting it to come out in another 10 days time, which is actually about taking care of your glucose and blood pressure and COVID time. So we have done a huge study. We are 8 authors and we have contributed our patients to this study. So that paper should be something to look for.
Next question from Dr. Ashok Chavan. Which fruits are good for diabetic patient if he is COVID positive?
Sir, any fruit which I said, which does not increase the glycemic index, so a little unripe fruit, kind of like even a banana if he's having, a little less ripe, but I would still suggest less, sweetened fruits like apple, pears, citrus fruits like oranges. These are the ones which are more advocated. Papaya, these are the ones which are more advocated. But in diabetic patients, the dictum remains one fruit once a day. So they cannot go high on the fruit intake if they wish to, only one fruit once a day, because we have to look at the sugar levels at the same time.
Next question is from Dr. Sanjay Wani. In Ramzan, how to treat diabetic patients?
So, Dr. Wani, in Ramzan, as I earlier mentioned, I definitely discourage patients to go for their, and in fact, I'd like to share it here that, people agreed, because I have a good class of Muslim patients who follow Ramzan religiously. These are the patients who come to me before Ramzan and take all the advices possible. In fact, I discourage those patients. Most of them agreed. But if they have to fast, then we have to change the dosages of medicine. Some medicines go in the late evening when they break their fast. Some medicines like DPP-4 inhibitors come in the morning when they have their 4 o'clock iftar. I don't know, I think Sehri it's called in the morning. So that's the way we have to maybe alter the dosage of medicine, come down on the dosage of medicine, and whenever they break their fast, I advise them to stay well hydrated, because that's very important.
Next question from Jignesh. Madam, can you suggest any usage of oil daily in present COVID time?
Uses of oil, yes, definitely. I just mentioned that 3 teaspoons of oil has to be allowed per day. But then, what they are now saying, ideally you should be blending oils. You should be mixing oils. Like one can be rice bran, one can be sunflower, mix it and use it. In some supermarkets, the blended oils are available. Okay. But it is very difficult. Routine cooking, I cook daily. I know it is tough. But the thing is, what you can do is you can change the quality of oil, the type of oil. So this time if you get a 2 liter or a 5 liter of rice bran oil, change it to sunflower next time, then to groundnut, then to soya. Keep on changing the quality of the oil. Though the intake should be minimal, but don't use the same oil. Like some people use only groundnut, they don't change it. So that's where you can change. So that's
Next question from Dr. Sangvi. Can diabetes be reversed by dieting?
So as I mentioned earlier, diabetes can be to some extent, if your A1C levels are high or if you have 4 to 5 years of diabetes, it is difficult to be reversed by dieting. But if you are in the initial stages of diabetes, still drug naive and not going in, your A1Cs are around 7.5, you can definitely reverse it, maybe go back to less than 7 by a good diet or not exactly diet, but a lifestyle modification, which includes your exercise too. But as I mentioned earlier, that this comes only with an addition of sustainability. So 2 mahina kiya, fir chhod diya, so you will be back to square one, and maybe with higher sugars than what you had previously.
Next question from Dr. Miling. Does increased serum potassium level affect diabetes, or does diabetes has any correlation with electrolytes?
No direct correlation with electrolytes, but definitely, as we know, patients who are on insulin, their potassium levels go down, or patients who are on ACE inhibitors and all, they have to be monitored with their potassium levels. So that's where we talk about electrolytes, or maybe some antihypertensives in our diabetic patient may alter the serum sodium levels. So but there is a direct connection of diabetes and electrolytes.
Next question from Dr. Chinchur. Your comments about insulin pump.
So yeah, insulin pump is something which I would like to put all my patients to, sir, because that's the ideal way we should be treating treating our diabetic patients, because that really helps in, kind of getting a very good glucose control. The new thing which we are talking about is time in range. So if you're 70% of your day is under good glycemic control, A1C से आगे अभी time in range है. So if your TIR is good, so then you are away, you're pushing yourself away from complications. But insulin pumps are the cost factor definitely is very high. Do I have my type 1s who are on insulin pump doing very well? I have my type 1s who cannot afford an insulin pump, but who go into pregnancy. At that time, when the sugars play a real havoc, that's where I put my patients on those 9 months on insulin pump, because I need a very good glycemic control, a stricter glycemic control, and there where the pump comes into play. So insulin pump, wonderful tool, best I guess to treat diabetes, but not affordable by everyone, because the consumables are also very costly.
Next question from Dr. Praveen Jain. Something about intermittent fasting.
So yeah, intermittent fasting, I know this is the in thing. If you ask me personally, I do not recommend intermittent fasting, because, sir, if you read that intermittent fasting paper also, which the Dr. Dixit had published, it has mentioned, though it is very small, it's mentioned it's not for diabetic patients. So we do not recommend any intermittent fasting for diabetics. Non-diabetics, it helps. I agree, it helps. It brings down your weight, it brings down your sugar levels. It definitely helps. But diabetic, no, sir, because they take medicines and you have to be eating on time. Intermittent fasting is not advocated in diabetic patients, definitely.
There is no question yet. So I will hand over the session to Dr. Jignesh Chauhan for closing remarks.
Okay, so everyone, good evening, everybody. Dear friends, it is my great pleasure that I am a Dr. Jignesh Vasant Chauhan, General Secretary of Dahisar Medical Association, got this opportunity to present a vote of thanks behalf of Dahisar Medical Association. First of all, I would like to thanks to our speaker cum DMH General Secretary Dr. Amit Sanghvi Madam for delivering excellent lecture to us and updating the knowledge about diabetes in current COVID epidemic. I would like to thanks to Sun Pharma company who have taken active participation in our today webinar session. Also, I would like to thanks you all for giving your valuable time and activity participating in today webinar. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for making me a part of this webinar. And thank you for all the delegates for taking out time and being a part of this talk at such a short notice. Really appreciate you all for being a part of my CME today. Thank you. Stay safe. Stay healthy.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice meeting everyone.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot. Thank you.